So another thing that I want to bring up is that the percentage of individuals of our culture, the Black culture, the brown culture, is 20%. We're 20% more likely to have and experience mental health issues from just being born Black, experiencing our environment, not having mother and fathers due to the system. Either our fathers are in jail or they're dead. So we're 20% more likely to have and experience a mental health breakdown and not get any help, because culturally, growing up, what do you hear? Oh, toughen up. You know, you need to be a little more tough, or you can't cry, or we don't go to therapists because you're not crazy. You know, and therapy doesn't necessarily mean you're crazy. You just need some time to process and learn new coping skills. And that's what therapy is about. So I want to open it up to Zakia Roberts. She's on the line. She actually has been out in the environment, experiencing, you know, the rallies and going through certain, you know, trials and tribulation as we grew up as Black young women.
Hey, Janisha. Thank you, and hello to everybody online. So I just wanted to just share my experience. So for the past 2 weeks, like since I found out about, you know, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, you know, the countless other acts, you know, the I don't remember the name, but the white woman in the park calling the police on the black man who was just bird watching. You know, since then, you know, there's been a lot of attention like on, you know, us as Black people, and you know, there's been a lot of questions on, you know, how do we feel, you know. So like, just personally with my company, you know, I work for a huge pharmaceutical company, and they've been having you know, Zoom meetings, and this is globally, you know. So our company it's a global company, you know, we're worldwide. So the actual CEO of my company actually decided to have some Zoom meetings, you know, with our Black co-workers. And so there was about, I don't know, maybe 500-600 people on the line, and we were asked to share, you know, like how our feelings were and things like that. And a lot of people got on the line, you know, sharing their experience, and they just cried, you know, and I definitely share those sentiments with them, because my own director called me, you know, in the beginning of the week, and I had to text her back because I had been crying that much. You know, I told her, you know, that I really can't verbalize my feelings right now without coming to tears. So it really felt good that after about 2 weeks, I finally got out and actually protested. You know, I was able to get that pent up energy out and, you know, actually just yell, you know, and to me, it really felt good. I mean, it was emotional too, you know, just being out there, you know, yelling, you know, Black power, you know, my Black skin is not a weapon, you know, just chanting with so many white people, because we were in Palos Verdes, you know, white people, Hispanic people, you know, people who didn't look like us. I mean, we could count on our, you know, hands, you know, how many actual Black people or mixed of mixed race were in the crowd, but we were fully supported. You know, we were out there at Trump Golf Course, but it was an extremely emotional day. And to the point where today, you know, I haven't even watched the news because I just felt extremely, extremely emotional. And I know a lot of people that I know have been emotional about what's going on.
Thanks, Zakia. Do we have anyone else who wants to share?
I can share. I'm Sheena, and I'm in Menifee, California, so I'm a little farther away than most of you. There's been peaceful protesting in the sister cities like Marietta and Temecula, and some here in where I live at now. But it's been, as I said to a lot of, you know, our team members, if you're on our team, for me, having to explain so much to my daughter, who is a teenager, she's in middle school. And, you know, I don't know, it's just, I've been thinking about a lot, like the last couple of weeks has been very exhausting. It's been emotional because I've always been teaching her correct history. I don't know how many people have kids or how old your kids are, but if you didn't know, like a lot of the schools now, they're not teaching our children our history or the correct history. I've noticed since my daughter was in like 4th or 5th grade when they start to learn about African American history, and really going into the textbooks and doing it with her. I learned, you know, a lot that they're reprinting these books, and they're teaching our children that we wasn't forced here, that we weren't slaves, that we came here to work to earn money, not the correct history. So since then, the last, 2-3 years, just teaching her correct history, watching movies with her. When we go, most of my family is from North Carolina, her dad's family is from Wisconsin. Just teaching her, taking her on trips and explaining like history to her. And just as of recently, with everything that's going on, to have to sit down and have these conversations with her, because she is a brown girl, she's a Black girl, her dad is Black, she has a brother. It's been emotional, because when she finally started to understand, she's like, I didn't learn this in school, but it's our job as parents to teach our kids. And it's been emotional to have to explain, something like this to your child, when you would think that at this point, it wouldn't be as bad. We know it's there, but that fact that we're going through this now, like we're living in a time to where this whole year so far has been a PTSD for my child. I'm a Marine vet, so I've had that already for myself, but to now know that my child now has PTSD trauma from life in general, like all the deaths that hit that didn't relate to COVID-19. COVID-19 happened, being quarantined, not being able to physically be around your friends and your family, and then this happened. So it's a lot of trauma that's been created. If we're not paying attention to our kids and teaching them ourselves, they want to know. And this is the time where we have to be present. So for me, it's been a teaching moment. It's been cried, it's been emotional. But you also, it's our place to just know that we have to educate ourselves so that we can properly educate our children and be there for them. And we have to stand in this together and know, like, this is what we're living in, but we have to fight for it to be resolved.
Absolutely. I definitely understand where you're coming from, because I have 2 children of my own. I have a 15-year-old and an 8-year-old, and we went protesting on Central in the car. And in the beginning, my son, he was all, excited, and he was saying his own chants. And then on the way back, he broke down and cried. He was like, it's a shame that we have to fight for something that should already be, or something like that. And it was very emotional. And for us as parents, we want to be able to control and protect our children. But in situations such as this, it's kind of hard, because it seems like we have no control. And so the best thing that we can do is educate our kids, no matter how hard it can be, because it can be traumatizing. But if we don't provide them that education and that information up front, then we're setting up the whole cycle to repeat itself, because some people just are not comfortable with those conversations.
Okay, Janisha, I have a question for you. What are the psychological effects of witnessing media images of Black people being brutalized and slain over and over and over again? Like, what are the psychological effects that people experience? Black people, mothers of Black children, mothers of, interracial children, what are those psychological effects?
Some of the psychological effects are surely PTSD, anxiety, depression, lack of socialization, isolation. All of those things come with trauma, and you don't have to experience trauma firsthand. Like, for instance, just because I didn't get brutalized by a police officer directly doesn't mean that I'm not affected. If I see it, if I hear about it, or I constantly, am exposed to it at a certain entity, everyone reacts different. Like, for instance, I have a high tolerance of stress, but I also know when to cut it off. So some people don't have that. So if they continually just keep traumatizing themselves by watching the news, and, the news is repeating themselves, the same stuff over and over and over again, and you start feeling all this anxiety, and you get hypervigilance, and you're getting startled responses. Those are all things that is caused from PTSD, but that's conflicted amongst ourselves when we continue to digest this information and not know when to put on the stop. You know, you have to know where your limits are.
Okay, so you touched upon, some of the coping mechanisms, but, so for people who are feeling, that depression that you're talking about, the anxiety surrounding this, it's like, what are some coping mechanisms that we can use in order to navigate through this time? Because it doesn't seem like it's going to be letting up anytime soon. So how do we navigate? How do we cope?
So each individual, of course, is different. So you have to find what suits you, and you have to know your limits. Like I said, for instance, if you know that the news is constantly talking about something that gives you anxiety, depression, or frustration, you need to decrease that interaction. You need to find a group of people that you found comfort in. And I'm not saying you have to go to a licensed therapist. You don't have to go to Kaiser and see your doctor. You can literally just have some self-care time. Take some time to yourself, express yourself, write down, you journal, listen to some music, educate yourself during this time, meditation, spirituality, whatever you believe in. That's the time that you want to really tune into those things so that you can maintain some kind of harmony. Because if you continuously not use those coping skills, then you are affecting your everyday life. And then that's when mental health really kicks in. And then now, guess what? You really are going to be set up to not be able to maintain employment and stuff like that because you haven't addressed those needs in your self-care.
Okay, so question to all the viewers, does anybody want to share, how you've been coping with, what's going on? Because we are inundated with, these images all the time. I mean, if you're watching the news, I mean, it's the same narrative over and over and over again. First, it was coronavirus over and over again. And then now, on top of being at home, we're then now, forced to listen to this all the time. And if we're not listening to it on television, your family members, your friends are talking about it. Or, if you're going to work or if you're Zoom meeting, people are constantly talking about this. So how have you all been coping with it? Like I said earlier, I just sometimes have to just shut off. I have to shut the television off because I'll constantly just watch CNN all day long. And I told myself the day of the blackout, I said, you know what? My goodness, I've been watching this all day and I've been crying a lot because they're showing those same images. I said, I need to turn this off and I'm going to watch just a regular show. And it really, helped ease me. I have to just shut it off sometimes.
Absolutely. If you guys want to share, you can either just raise your hand or raise the hand button or put it in the chat so that we can unmute you. Arzel, let's see, where are you? You have to unmute yourself, Arzel, because you're locked. There you go.
Hi, everybody. I'm Arzel. Janisha and I actually went to graduate school together. I currently work for the Department of Mental Health, and I am studying for my license now. One thing I want to say is that with watching the news and hearing it over and over, I personally do not really watch the news. If I watch it, I may watch it in the morning one time just to hear what's going on. And after that, that's it. There's something what they call vicarious trauma. And that's what a lot of people are experiencing when you keep watching things over and over and over, because it is really a lot. So like Janisha was saying, what I've done is I've stepped up my game with exercising, talking to loved ones, praying. And like I said, I work for the Department of Mental Health, and within my office, it's only maybe about 5 of us African Americans in my whole office. So a lot of the, how could I say it? A lot of the other nationalities are asking us how can they educate themselves on what's going on. And I actually spoke out, and basically I was explaining to them how you all don't know what it is to grow up in an African American community, how our parents tell us or tell our sons. I have a brother. My brother was raised, you have 5 brothers. You guys can't walk together down the street because you're considered as a gang. You can't, if you get pulled over by the police, make sure your hands are shown and all this. And a lot of people that I work with, they were completely ambivalent to what we go through. Just dealing with trying to get through response to your question, Zakia, is basically just to, like you said, cut yourself off from watching that, limit yourself to what you're watching, what you're allowing to come into your spirit, or what you're allowing to come into you emotionally, because it can drain you. To speak to your friends and uplift each other, uplift one another. And like you said, getting out there and being able to get in it. I personally haven't gone out because I live in Santa Clarita, and I haven't been able to come into the city to go to any of the to a lot of the protests. But I actually was afraid for my daughter. I have a daughter that's studying for the bar, so it sparked up a lot in her, because she was like, "This is the reason why I went to law school, because of all this is going on." But one of the things I had to explain to her was, going out there, you're going out there for one reason, but you have, I know you guys have heard, there were white officers actually causing things to occur. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I was explaining to my daughter, you have one mission, but you have other people that are out there that can start things. I think there was one incident where somebody had the sound of gunshots on their phone or something, and it just sparked, things just went off. So it's like, we have to be careful going to the different protests.
Thank you for that. You're absolutely right. Like, exercising is one of my main things that I use to decompress. I exercise at least 3 to 4 times a day. I go running in the morning, and it actually is a decompressing. It's something that relaxes your body. It helps you have maintain stability. You can focus a lot better. It just gives you a total different day if you work out in the morning or work out in the night. You sleep better, you're not restless. So that's something, definitely, if you are not doing any type of activity, that's something you want to consider, to do some kind of mobility, even if it's stretching, yoga, like I said, meditation. You have to go to the things that you know is going to calm you, and not build up that anxiety and that extra tension for no reason. We know what's going on. Watch the news once a day, and you're going to get that information, and then go for your run. So thank you for mentioning it, Marzel. Do we have any men on the line? I would like to hear from some men after we hear from Sheena.
No.
Okay, so real quick, just to share some things that I do too. We have our workouts during the week that we work out live on Zoom, and then the days, since the schedule changed, that we don't, I still keep that time to work out. But for me, I've never been a person to watch a lot of news. A lot of times, especially, I don't know, maybe because I've worked for the government, I know a lot of how the government works, and how they don't always put out all the truth. So for me, I don't watch the news. I have headlines, updates that come to my phone. And once I'm up to speed as what's going on daily, then I'm good. But, like, if you're a spiritual person, praying, getting closer to God or whoever your higher power is, meditation is going to really help you mentally to get through a lot of this. Or listening to YouTube, like if you have someone that you can tune into, like a live stream or a recorded stream from a church service or something, just feeding your mind positive things. With everything negative that's going on, you can acknowledge it and understand it is going on, but you can't fill yourself up with all of that. You have to fill yourself with positive things as well, because if not, you're going to fall into this depressive state that's going to be hard. If not, you won't be able to come out of, because we're now experiencing and going through things that our ancestors went through. And, although a lot has changed, a lot has not changed. And we're doing more to trying to change it, but you have to be stable mentally for yourself to get through it, and so that you can be strong for you and your family and your kids or whoever that's looking up to you for support, but mainly for yourself. If you're not filling yourself up with something positive that's going to keep you going, the negative stuff and watching the news is going to drain you, like exhaust you to where you're going to not want to get up every day. And you don't want to feel that. So however much you think you need, or whenever you think you want to get the update on the news, you get that. If you need to stop watching the news and put headline on your phone to send you updates so that you'll see what's going on without watching the news over and over and over again, then you do that. Like you said, exercise. Make a schedule, like pick out set time slots to keep to, so okay, I'm gonna go by this schedule to make sure that I'm busy throughout the day, so that I'm not filling my mind and myself up with all this negativity that's going on. So whether it's a fitness community or, reach out to family and friends, like checking in on people, putting that extra time in, because we have time now to check in on the people that you normally wouldn't have time to check in with. And just make sure you're just doing different things throughout the day, so that you're not constantly like thinking about, oh, let me turn on the news. Because in reality, we know what's going on. Like you know what it's going to be. So don't feed into it so much. Just stay positive, focus on whatever you can. If you're a writer, write, journal in, log, find something that's going to put you into a different space, so that it's not the only thing that you're dwelling on.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I really want to emphasize that we don't want to remain silent or ignorant to the fact of what's going on, but just don't go overload with it, and that's the main thing. Like, be informed, know what's going on, but just don't indulge in it over and over and again. It's re-traumatizing yourself. So anyone else like to process or share their experience over the last 30 days? Questions?
Okay. Okay. So I think for me, in reference to the overload process, I think I did a lot of that with like the introduction to COVID, as far as like overloading on the news and trying to inform yourself, and just because it was something just so different and so many people were dying from it. And I think the biggest thing is just educating yourself from a safety perspective. I think that's why I was just overindulging and I was just watching the news all day. But I think that was my biggest learning in reference to like how you're talking about, too much content, in a sense of like every single day can take an effect on you. And I noticed that over a course of time that it started to affect me personally. And then since then, excuse me, like this entire month, I've decided to like fast and not watch TV at all. But I think one of the things is, from a social media landscape, there's just so much content in reference to the current protests that are going on. And I feel like as a Black woman, yeah, there's some trauma that's connected to a lot of the things that I'm seeing, but I think it's also, I'm from a place to where I want to repost it to inform. I want to repost a lot of information to like, combat the things that we're dealing with. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's a little bit different as far as how I was looking at COVID versus how I'm looking at what's going on right now. So the information is just so different. Like, I kind of rather continue to like look at things that are going on and the information that's coming out, whether it's past cases or past things that people have dealt with over the last 5 years and that are now coming to the forefront, and where we're able to set the platforms to get the information out so these people can be convicted. I think these are things that I love to see, but at the same time, it's super hurtful. Just because as Black people in the world, this is just constant things that we always get reminded that we have to deal with. So it's just different. I think that's the only thing I can really say in reference to how I view TV and information as far as the overloading and downloading into myself. So I'll share that.
And I think what you were saying is that the content from the news is totally different too. You're getting information from, people who want you to see a picture that they want you to see, as opposed to a culture mostly that you're following is people of your color or your background, or they have some kind of insight to what's going on, and they're sharing our history, which is informative at the same time. So your processing is a lot different as opposed to the anxiety. It's more of a processing than it is informative. Traumatic, if that makes any sense. So the way that the information is digesting is totally different than how it's digesting on Instagram. Because now you're like, okay, yes, my people need to know about this. So it's giving you some fulfillment at the same time. So I think that's the great differentiation of the two, that you were able to process the difference that, okay, the news is not it, but I can do the social media because I'm in control of what I share and what I don't.
Okay, I'll move on to the next question. So, Jisha, we've talked about, anger or being depressed. How do you deal with that worry factor? Like myself, I'm a mom, of a 2-year-old, and I keep on worrying, for his future. But, more presently, I'm a wife, and obviously, my husband, he's in the age group where, the people that are targeted by the police, I'm sure we all have, nephews or husbands, boyfriends that we're constantly worrying about. And I mean, even before this current situation, just for me, I want my husband to have his, location services on, like we have meetup spots, in case something happens, it's like, I'm constantly worrying, like about once we had a son, it's like, okay, do we have enough life insurance in case one of us pass away, early? It's like the worry factor, really, I feel like comes down on me. How do we deal with that? The worry factor.
So worry is natural. You're going to worry regardless. Now, how much you worry, you have control over. So it's cognitive behavioral therapy. You have to learn how to rechannel that thought process. I worry a lot as well because I have a husband, I have sons, I have nephews that, are Black. They're Black men. We live in the ghetto, considered the ghetto, in the bad neighborhood, considerably, so every time he leaves to go to the store, it's always that background thought of, dang, I hope he doesn't, get stopped by the police, or better yet, get gang banged on by one of our own. The culture is just so, disturbing to know that at any time, our family members can be taken away from us, and it's sad. But the key point of maintaining anxiety is learning how to stop block. So every time you have a negative thought, you replace it with 5 positives. So if I say, okay, he's going to the store and he's not going to come back, well, it's a smaller percentage that he's not going to come back, and it's a higher percentage that he is. He's safe, he knows his surroundings, and he knows how to protect himself, and he doesn't do these volatile behaviors. So I always think about the positive and not the negative. Also to ground yourself. When you have anxiety attacks, I know a lot of people struggle with that. You need to learn how to pinpoint certain things. Okay, this is left, this is right, and I'm at this address. You have to redirect those thoughts as well, so that you can realize that you're in the here and now. And yes, factual things is you have to have your shit in order, regardless of if you have life insurance or not. You need life insurance, whether they die for good causes or bad causes, So you have to learn how to channel into the necessary facts and not being, ignorant to the fact that these things are happening, but also learning how to redirect those maladaptive thoughts.
Okay. Does anybody want to share, or have anything to add to that, about worrying? Does anybody find themselves, overly worrying, during this time?
Go ahead, Chelsea.
Yes. I have a son that's 10, so he's like only 2 years younger than Tamir Rice was when he was murdered by the police. And he's just because America in general, look at the Second Amendment, America is filled with violence. We were founded on violence, the eradication and genocide of the natives, and it's been violent ever since. I mean, they got violent over paying, shipping, and handling over some tea. That's why America was founded, right? And then there's violence through, like, even our kids are desensitized to violence, like with the they're superheroes, action figures, like everything. So I mean, it's playing with a fake gun is almost as American as getting killed by the police. You know what I'm saying? As the racism and everything by the police. So I do have worry about my son, because you just want them to be carefree and want them to be kids. You don't want to have conversations about the police like she was saying, or even like, I remember the one image that shook him. He had a moment like King when he was younger, when he saw the gentleman that was selling the DVDs get murdered. In I forget, in New Orleans, because if you live in an urban community, before everything was digitized, the DVD man is part of your local community. Like the guy that's slinging DVDs is part of his neighborhood, is part of his community. So he identifies with him. So when he saw that happen is when I had to have the conversation with him, and I think he was like 4 or 5, like a very light conversation. So I think that the worry started then, because he had a full-on breakdown on the cats. Like, so that's what happens to me when I get older. And I was just like, wow, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how to have this conversation so early. And, you know, and then like my children's fathers, like they're just targets, you know, and even though they used to live a certain lifestyle, the police don't know that they're on the up, you know, that they're just fathers and just trying to take care of their kids now. So it's always sense of worry, you know, for our brothers, you know, our friends' husbands, you know, because it affects the whole community. You know, if something happens to Janisha's husband, like it affects our whole community. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah, I actually want to piggyback off on what you guys were saying about someone asked a question like, how do we support our husbands and our sons? And like I said this evening, I feel like my children should know what's going on. So I did involve them in, you know, protest, which was a healthy protest. It was comforting, it was friendly, it was energetic, it was something that they enjoyed. But then on the way back, I look in the back and my son's crying. So how do you protect them and how do you address that? So I kindly just asked him what was wrong and let him voice his opinion and didn't hold back and say, you're not supposed to feel that way or you're going to be okay. It's the facts, you know, some people are not nice. Some police officers are not good people, but look at all the white culture that was out there. Look at all the Hispanics that were there to support.
How you doing?
As a Black man, as a young Black boy. So he was able to process that and say, you know what, you're right, Mom. It was a lot of people that wasn't like me that was out there. So I think that's important for us to realize that it's going to be hard to experience that with your children, but it's imperative that you do. Terrell, you wanted to say something? Unmute yourself.
Wait, there we go. You can hear me? I think it's good. First, I would like to say I appreciate everybody on this call, and I was just flipping through the people on here, and it's more women than men. And I think the women worry about us more than we worry about ourselves because we already know how to navigate what's going on. We've been living with this all our life. This is nothing new. But I appreciate the fact that everybody out here voicing their opinion. And I think we do got to overload. That's what it's going to take because we always give it a little bit and then we fall back. So these protests has happened before. It just never been like how it is. And it seemed like now people are just really tired. And they're like, we're going to keep fighting until we see some type of change. Something got to change. And we all got to keep fighting so our kids don't have to deal with it. And I just wanted to speak and just commend all the women on here that's trying to make a change for their sons. Because it's the men who it affect, really, but it affects both of us on both sides because they take the man out of the home. But we're the ones that's being killed, and the women are standing up more for us. So to all the fellas, to the women, talk to the men, we got to get out here and get as strong as the women. So we worry and we need to worry. We should worry. And we have to keep worrying until we make a change. And we should all be proud of what's going on because I'm happy right now. It hurt, but I'm happy that the people are coming together and we finally trying to make a change. Like we on a call, all us Black folks on this call talking about how we gonna make change.
So it's actually beautiful, and we got to keep doing what we're doing.
Thank you for that. Anyone else have any questions, comments, concerns, feelings?
Well, I just wanted to say, Janisha, thank you for having this forum and a place for all of us to get together and just speak about our feelings. And I'm sorry I can't show myself. I'm cooking dinner for 3 little children, but I appreciate what Terrell said. And I think we worry, right? I think as women, we just worry. We just have more empathy. We have more feelings, so we do worry. And a lot of us do have sons, and it's a hard and tough conversation to have. And I tried to have it with my 11-year-old, and I could barely get through it. It was really, really tough, but we have to do it, right? We have to do it. And I don't know if you saw the stats, but we are witnessing the biggest movement that's ever happened. That's a big deal, right? So I just want everyone to kind of keep that in mind and keep fighting. Thank you.
Absolutely. That right there, as knowing that you tried to have a conversation, that's the starting point. And that's what therapy is about. I remember me and my husband having a conversation about therapy for years, and it's always been taboo. And it's only taboo because our parents didn't suggest it or didn't agree with it. But that's when we changed the narrative. It's time for us to say it's okay for you you feel, and it's okay for you to get assistance and go and get someone else's help, because therapy isn't us telling you what's right and what's wrong. It's simply what we're doing now. We're processing and we're coming up with ways to deal with things that are bothering us and affecting us on an everyday level. So I encourage everyone, even if it's just getting kids together and having an outlet of discussion. I know we were talking to my daughter about having a teen summit because we did it for Trayvon Martin, and those kids really took in the information and processed it amongst themselves. And it's us that has to change that narrative for them to even think that it's possible.
Okay, Janisha, to just further the conversation on talking with your children. As a therapist, the 2 therapists on the line, I know you may have to deal with, adults, teenagers, maybe, elementary school children, and younger. What types of tools do you use to talk to different, age groups, so as opposed to, your son, 8 years old, or Janina's son, 11 years old, going to junior high, what is there specific language that we should use, to talk to our children, elementary versus junior high? Are there different visuals, like the CNN thing, that happened with Sesame Street? Like what are the tools that we should use?
So you absolutely want to stay age appropriate. Like certain things I just would not share with King. I won't tell him, oh, this guy got killed in the head and you should be totally afraid of police, because then he's going to grow up and run. And that puts him more at harm's way, right? So our King School actually had a whole week of educational books and different YouTube videos that they talked and processed with the kids. But I was present because I wanted to be able to control if it was something that I was interested in my son learning or not learning. So you want to be your child's first responder. You want to be the one that is transparent, because if you're not and they learn it from someone else, they're going to be like, oh, well, this is the right thing because my mom told me nothing different or my dad showed me nothing different. So we are the first responders. We are the images that they see every day. We are the ones that they see more often, and then they go into school, and so the teachers become the teachers and the kids become their teachers, so they emulate that. But if you don't have the foundation at home, then that's where it's going to start to turn left or right. So you want to be able to control that narrative for your son. Like Noah, now he's not even 2 years old. How old is Noah? 2? He's 1, right? So Noah's really young, so he has no race. He has nothing. He has no cultural deficits. He believes everyone's the same. So as he gets older, and you start seeing kids mistreat them in a certain way because of the color of their skin, that's when you want to start addressing it right before it happens, when he's able to cognitively understand what you're saying and just dictate it.
Okay. So I just wanted to give it.
Did you have your hand up, Arzel? Okay. You have to unmute yourself.
So I just wanted to piggyback on what Janisha was saying. Definitely make sure it's age appropriate. And the other thing too is use incidents like teaching moments. Like when you see something that comes up right at that instant with him, with your sons, use it as a teaching moment. There was one I sent Janisha earlier this week, a TED talk on a guy when he said when he was like 10 years old, he and one of his friends, he had a white friend, and they were playing with water guns, right? They were chasing each other around at night, hiding behind cars and stuff, shooting each other with water guns. And his dad, at that instant, he said his dad snatched him in the house and told him, son, look, you cannot play like that. You know, if you're playing like that and, you know, officers come by, they will misconstrue that whole thing and it can turn ugly. So it's unfortunate that he had to tell his son that, but he used that as a teaching moment. So just use different things when they do occur. Don't give stuff to them before, you know, things come down. When it does happen, try to use it as a teaching moment.
Regina, you wanted to share?
Yes. Let me pull my video off. Hi, guys. I just kind of wanted to firstly just say thank you for hosting this call. It is, you know, it's just a very beautiful thing for us to all really be able to come in here and connect. And I just kind of want to backtrack a little. I believe it was Terrell. Please excuse me if I'm butchering your name. But one of the things he mentioned as far as like, you know, we have our Black men who are, you know, they're aware, you know, and having to, I don't want to say put on a facade, but having to wear this armor constantly, you know, when you're going out day to day. And it's one of those things where I think it's really sad in the African American community that it's become a stigma, or it has been a stigma to seek out assistance and to seek out therapy. And for women, it's a little easier for us to maybe make that decision because we're natural nurturers. And I think that's where the worry comes into play, because that's who we are, you know, in our being, in terms of being, you know, just having that innate ability to care and want to make sure that not just, you know, our children, but our men are, you know, taken care of. And so I feel very important for us to embrace and hope that our men are able to take a step back and acknowledge, like, it's okay to cry. It's okay to share your feelings. It's okay to have that release and not feel like you have to bottle it up and to stay strong. And not even to say to stay strong, because crying does not mean that you are weak. You know what I mean? And that's something I feel that has been heavily embedded in us, amongst the million other things within the Black community, just because we've had to withstand so much, you know. And what happens is over time we become numb to being able to feel those emotions just to be able to cope. And it creates conflict in other areas in our life, and then overflows into the relationships and prevents us from being able to show that affection to one another within the household, if that makes sense. Because you can't disconnect from your emotions. When you put that block up, when you put that guard up, it shuts you out from other things. And if you're holding on, you're not in a place to where you can receive. When, you know what I'm saying, when you're shut down. So that's just kind of my piece of it. I also wish that there were more men on the call, because that's kind of like in a sense, that's our front line. Those are, you know, when you look at the statistics in terms of the amount of individuals who have been brutally gunned down by the police or taken out in some capacity, it's entirely disheartening, you know. But at the same time, it is also primarily men. And so it's like, okay, as women, we are worried because we're trying to identify the ways and how it is that we can protect you, right? But then we need to be able to get to you energetically. We need to be able to get to you and understand, what is it that you're feeling? How are you hurting? How can I help you? What can we do? You know, and we can't help if it's completely closed off. So that's all I have. But again, thank you.
You touched on a really good point, Regina, about the holding in emotions as people, as men, really. So I would like to know, like, how many women or men experience not being able to share their feelings because it was taught to them, or they were told they did not have those feelings.
Okay. So I want to direct a question, because we do have some non-Black people on the line, you know, who may be, you know, mothers of interracial children, you know, with Black parents. Or, you know, you may have, like I have a nephew, you know, who's Hispanic and Black, you know. How do you approach, you know, talking about, you know, these things, you know, as someone of another race? How do you talk to, you know, those children, you know? What are some, you know, some mechanisms, some, you know, tools for approaching that as a non-Black person that needs to talk to, you know, maybe their Black children, you know, their interracial children about this? You know, some people may have adopted kids. How should they approach that?
So first, I'd like to say, anyone wants to share that has biracial children, are married to someone that is African American, or have biracial nieces and nephews?
I do, Niche.
Okay, what you know?
My daughter is 12 years old. My ex-husband is Mexican, Hispanic. And interestingly enough, prior to a lot of what's going on, is she's always struggled with being able to identify with being Black. When she was younger, you know, kids, they don't understand race in that way. So she would say, you know, mommy is brown and I'm Peach. Like, she always called herself Peach. And going to school in a predominantly white neighborhood has also played a major part in, you know, some of the questions that have come up in terms of, you know, she has curly hair, you know, and her white friends, they have straight hair, and her Black friends, their hair is a lot more textured. And so having to have that conversation with her, you know, just letting her know, like, hey, like, this is okay, this is who you are. You know, you are Black and you're also Mexican, you know, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. And just trying to embrace her in her entirety and letting her speak her truth. And I also allow her, you know, when she gets in trouble, whatever the case may be, when she gets in trouble, like, I'll tell her what it is, and I do my best not to yell, but I also let her know, like, yo, if you're mad at me, like, it's okay, because you're gonna be mad at me. I can't, you know, because I'm your parent doesn't mean that it's okay for me to extract your will to experience certain emotions, right? So that has helped me in being able to really communicate with her and have that open door policy where she's comfortable enough to express some of the challenges and hardships that she's even experienced, like even understanding, like, with the coronavirus, and how she's, you know, like, wow, mom, like, I actually pulled her out of school right before, she was like, wow, I'm really glad you pulled me out of school, you know, and she's in a place now where she's like, I don't even really want to communicate with some of my friends because they're making jokes about a lot of the things that are going on. I'm grateful that I was blessed with the wisdom to be able to make that decision and choosing to converse with her in that capacity, because it leaves the room for me to be able to connect with her and help her navigate through all of this.
Yeah, like I said, we are the ones who are the ones that give the kids the go-to, the okay initially. And so if we don't allow our children to feel their feelings, then they're going to compress those things, and then that turns into transitions into them get into relationships that are not healthy. They're not able to express themselves. They're getting into situations that they shouldn't have even had a chance to get into, because we have taught them not to have a feeling, and feelings are natural. So I think I can't say it or say it enough that if you don't tell your kids, you're going to leave the world to be able to teach your kids. And then the outcome is going to be something that you have no control over. So it's up to us to change the narrative, to change their thought process, to educate them, to make them aware and make them unignorant to the fact. Elisa?
Hi, thank you. I have a hard time getting words out, so just thank you for this. I'm non-Black. My husband is here with me. He's listening. I had to encourage him to listen. Same as the previous speaker, our two girls are also, you know, they're half. And so they are going on 8 and 6. So I've always had this dialogue with them. I'm their first teacher. Like the mother is always the first teacher. They learn what they're going to learn from me, and they need to feel secure with coming to me and talk to me. We've always talked about diversity. We only recently had begun to talk about the injustices and all of that, because I have a second grade, or she just finished second grade. So clearly in second grade, she's learning and being exposed to more of this. So it was inevitable that, you know, we're going to talk about that. I make it a point to have them exposed to like a diverse group of when they were in preschool, daycare. I've always researched out and just made sure they had some diversity there, so they can see it wasn't all the same color in their public. I'm ranting. I had to speak to them about what was happening. I waited until, you know, we're home, so I had the privilege to kind of keep them from it a little bit. I don't watch the news channels. I watch the social media. I watch the activists that are out there with the real coverage, and then I research, you know, the sources and stuff. And there's a lot of positivity out there with the people that are on the front lines as well. So I look to the positive posts on the ones that are out there, and I look to the real stuff that not so great to watch, you know, that you got to watch. I can't watch with the TV. I can't. But I go and I see what's out there, and I share positivity with the girls. And at some point I had to share with them the why and the who and what's happening. And okay. So my husband, again, he's listening, he's here. He can't speak to them. He doesn't know what to say. What was it? You don't know how to. Yeah. He doesn't know how to. And I did ask him his permission to kind of speak about him. He's right here with me. He doesn't know how to. Simple, basic, the younger one, she burst out. She said, I don't want to hear it because I don't want to hear it anymore, Mommy, I'm scared. And then, you know, well, what is it that you're scared of? The guns. Okay, so then I went on to talk about that and how all of that. But the older one, she kind of received it. She didn't respond though, so we just kind of keep it an open dialogue. So again, how can like my husband, a Black male, like how can he speak to them? Because I think they need to hear from him. He's the one with the experiences. I have seen and witnessed things in the area I grew up in. but I haven't experienced it. He's more so experienced it. And he's at a loss for what to say or how to speak. So he just does it. And I think he needs to.
Well, you're putting your expectations on people. So we don't want to put expectations because sometimes we're just not going to get what we want. And that's just
right. And I want to be fair too. So I can.
But that's just on life in general. Like, I have learned that my expectations and how I want things to be handled is not necessarily how other people are going to handle it. And this is a very uneasy conversation to really have, because even when we were out protesting, I had so many thoughts that went from good to bad, and like being around just white people and to say, why do I have to validate that I'm Black? You know, we had a group of white girls walk up to us and say, can we walk with you guys? Well, did you have to ask the white people, could you walk with them? So, but at the same time, I had to rechannel that and say, you know what, that was just simply out of respect. And they want to say that, look, we're standing here with you and for you and by you. So it was all about that thought mindset that I had of, you know, all white people are bad. And that's not what it is. They all were there for us and supportive. So having those conversations along with your kids are uneasy, because it's uneasy for us to have as adults. So as a man, especially Doug and Terrell and who I know it's a few other men on here that may can chime in, but they are not very vocal emotionally, you know, of regular things naturally, like to have a conversation with their kids about you're not good enough because of your skin. Like, no one wants to have that uncomfortable conversation. And sometimes it just takes the woman and the wife to kind of fill in that gap and merge it together. And dad is there for support always. They're always going to have that protector. And it's just a work in progress. So you guys already know what the issue is. Vocal.
If I might, I think I need to initiate the more of the conversations and kind of say, well, do you have any input, or say, girls, do you have any questions for, you know, that you want to talk about that daddy and I can answer for you, and maybe be that one to kind of maybe get the questions going, because I can talk. So I can, you know, I have the questions, I have the fireworks are popping. But, you know, like maybe I need to take initiative to maybe begin the conversations more and not be afraid to ask.
Exactly. Don't be afraid.
Ask him some questions.
Yes.
Yeah. Let me get the door.
Because a lot of times we're timid about asking about our own culture. I know we were just having a conversation, me and my best friends, about me getting licensed and taking pictures or putting a photo on. And I was like, dang, should I wear my natural hair? Why do I have to downsize my Blackness to, you know, go into corporate America? You know, why can't I just feel like, okay, yeah, I can wear my curly hair or my nappy hair, natural state, and be okay with that? It shouldn't even have been a second guess. But even me in the field that I'm at, I still had that thought, like, do I have to downsize my Blackness? And at the end of the day, we processed it, and it was a hell no. Either you want to have therapy with me or you don't. You're the one that's going to miss out on the greatness of processing and getting through some of these trials and tribulations you're going through. And what's for you is going to be for you, and what's not is not going to be for you. So I think that's important that you brought that up, Elisa, about the lack of, I guess, what's the word?
Just participating in the community, in the talks. And I think that one thing I'll say, though, that I want to say that's important is I don't feel that it's his responsibility to inform me. I think that as a parent, obviously, and I have these children that have both cultures, like it's my job just as much as it is his to teach them about their Blackness and their brown. Like, it's not his job, like, oh, you teach them this culture, I'll teach them. No, I teach them I see them as a whole, and I teach them as everything they, you know, and because we don't see them as this and that. It's like they're both. So it's like, I guess what I'm saying is I don't leave it his responsibility. I teach them also about their Black culture as well. And it's up to me to research and to learn how to approach that with them. But I guess I just need to know how to ask him for more support to kind of endorse kind of what I'm saying. I think that's what I'm looking for, is like for him to endorse, or for him to like validate what I'm saying, just I'd like to confirm, I think, because he's the one with the experiences. I think that's where it was. And I need to know, obviously, if I'm stepping out of my place too, and at some point where it's like, but then again, they have their aunties, their uncles, and that's where, you know, they have that role too, where I know I can always reach out and ask if I need, you know, help with information, or to make sure that I'm, you know, informing them of, you know, themselves.
Yeah. Chelsea posted 82% of teachers are white. So dialogue in the home is very important. And that's true. My son goes to a predominantly Black and Hispanic school, but most of the teachers are white. You know, so whose history are they learning? You know, who's over the schools? Who's over the charter schools? Who's over the public schools?
Right. Can I chime in for a minute, Janisa, just for, is it Alicia? So my daughter, she'll be 13 this year. And her dad and we're both Marine vets, but we're separated. But she has, her brother is Black and Hispanic. And so is her little brother's mom, other two kids. So they're around each other, you know, a lot. So the conversation that we were having, she spent a lot of time here. Now she's with her dad because she's been worried. She wants to her and her dad are really close. They're two peas in a pod, but with everything that's going on, she had questions for me about what can she do for her dad? How can she protect her dad? How does she love her dad and her little brother? You know, so it's been really emotional in my house. And my daughter, she's of a lighter skin like her dad. And when we were in the military, because we worked so closely with so many different people from all walks of life, we didn't teach her color so much. She had friends from everywhere, but she really didn't understand the color. But the last few years, like I said, as things start to change and we noticed what she wasn't learning in school as to what life really is, and even now present the last month, you know, we really had to break that down to her. And she has started to come to learn that, you know, the last couple of years as well, like, okay, there is color. We didn't want you to see it, but there is color and this is why. So she has a very great understanding of it now. But when she started to ask me questions about, you know, how does she love her dad and how does she support and protect her dad during this? Is her dad going to be okay? Like calling him, if he didn't answer the phone, she's freaking out because she's thinking like, is he okay? Like, is my little brother okay? So I had to call him and have that conversation with him and let him know, hey, you know, because men, they're not as emotional as we are. A lot, like your husband, like, you know, he probably don't really know what to say. But if we let them know, like, hey, our kids are most likely going to come to us first. So we have that conversation with their fathers, you know, with our husbands, our significant other, and say, hey, these are the concerns of our child. You need to just step in and let them know, this is what I said. I just need you to step in, have a conversation, let them know you're just, you know, that you're here and that you're going to do everything that you can to make sure that they understand it as well. And that, you know, like one night, I guess he went protesting and his phone died. He didn't answer the phone. My daughter cried for hours because she was scared. And I didn't know he went protesting. But after he apologized, like, I'm so sorry I went protesting, but I'll make sure that I check in with you. And I'm like, okay, you have to start having these conversations. So you need to check in with your son. I think the little boy is 5. But my daughter was like, well, my little brother, he's Hispanic and Black. Like, does this affect him too? And I'm like, yeah, because he's Hispanic and Black, but he looked more Black. He's lighter skin, but he have our hair. He has, you know, he's more classified as African American than anything else. So now and then she's like, oh, well, so now I have to worry about my brother and my dad. But, you know, we just educate them and we assure them that we're going to do everything that we can to support them, you know, mentally and emotionally, and be there for them and give them the information they need so that they will know that they're secure with us doing our part as their parents, because it starts with us. But I had to have that conversation with her dad, like, hey, I know it's not your thing to typically, you know, do a lot of talking and educating, but right now is the time where I need your support I need you to help her understand what's going on too. And let her know how that you're going to make sure that you're going to protect yourself when you're out there, whether you're protesting or you at work, you know, like let her know that you're okay. So I don't know if that will help a little bit as to you guys. But yeah, it's just as long as you both have each other's support and you just do the best that you can, a lot of times you may be the conversation starter and they're going to come to you first and say, hey, you know, ask your dad, you know, or let him know what's going on and he can give his input. But most of the time you're who they're going to come to first with the questions and the conversation starter.
Janisha, we can't hear you.
I would like to ask some of the men. I know you guys are on mute and your faces are not on, and this is what I actually do in group therapy. So I would like now having to call somebody out just for you guys to speak on how do you support your children and how do you support yourself during this time?
I'll share. I'm not able to turn my screen on at the moment. My name is Chris. First off, I love the concept of this. I love this dialogue. I think that's something that we miss within our community oftentimes is we don't have dialogue like this. And yes, as men, as T said, like men, we grew up, especially growing up in the inner city, we grew up with already knowing kind of what to expect and kind of how to move the right way. And even, you know what I'm saying, even knowing how to move the right way doesn't mean that it won't happen to you, but it's not like what's going on right now isn't so much a shock because I've been pulled out my car and put on the ground with guns to my head for being black while driving as a teenager. And I learned early on, you know, that the possibilities of going to the store could end with either police brutality or gang violence, you know what I mean? And so those are some things that we grow up in the inner city already knowing, and with what's going on, the thing that I've personally been focusing on, yes, I get extremely angry, especially seeing all the stuff like on social media. I've never really been real big on the news because I know that it's dictated to what they want you to know and believe other than the weather, and even that. But I get frustrated, I get angry, and I've actually caught myself a lot lately getting more angry seeing police brutality, the things that are coming to the forefront. I share it kind of like what Brittany was saying. I share it more so for enlightening. I'm in a profession where I deal with a lot of different cultures, a lot of different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and I want to make sure that they're able to see some of the things that come up on my feed that they may not have as much exposure to because they don't follow the same people and get that same social media generated information. But what I'll say, what I've been doing more so for myself is focusing on the thing that we don't always talk about, which is our economic disparities, focusing on making sure that, you know, like, because we don't have the resources growing up, a lot of the things that we were exposed to, we have a different dynamic in understanding, and focusing on that aspect. Like there's a lot of different ways to protest, and it's not always just going to be on the front lines in the crowd, you know what I mean? There's a lot of different ways, and talking to like my nephews and talking to cousins and really trying to talk from a perspective of if we have more people in a position of leadership, and what I mean by leadership is economically, because we have a lot of people who, you know, are in different industries that have a lot of money, but they don't have that voice. They're more so puppets. But if we have economic difference, we can create a different dynamic. Something like Black Wall Street, and in that regard, I feel like that's where a lot of our change and a lot of our progression is going to come from. But like I said, I love this entire thing. I don't know if I answered what you wanted me to answer, but I did want to be able to, you know, unmute myself and participate because I am taking in, so I wanted to give.
Yeah, you definitely share some great aspects in your position and how it has affected you. So I appreciate that so much, Chris. It's sad to say that we are just accustomed to the environment that we're born in and raised in, and that's something that really changed. And so that goes into my favorite approach of solution focus. You know, we talk about the problems, we talk about what we've done and what we experience, but what are we as a people going to do individually to unite wholly to make a change. And so therapy is just one entity. That's just helping us process the shit that happened. I mean, the stuff, sorry. I know my grandmother is on here. The stuff that happens in the past, but we want to be able to move on from that trauma, that depression, that oppression, that racism, and move on to something better. And so the way that we do that is finding solutions to our problems. We want to stop racism and oppression and all these different things. What are you doing individually? And that's what you need to find out. What do you want to be a part of, and stick to that and be consistent. You can't say you're forced to fall off. That's just like if you want to lose weight, if you try Herbalife for 10 days and you don't get a result and you stop, you're not going to get a result. You have to be consistent and persistent on what your goal is. So it's important for us to, support Black businesses. You have to keep that when Black people our culture go into business, their prices are not necessarily inflated. They're paying more for products because they're not able to purchase these big wholesale things. Because I get a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not paying $15 for that shirt," but I go to Bloomingdale's and pay $55 for the same T-shirt, or something similar. So it's important for us to realize and not support our people because the prices are $3 to $4 more, and because you can get it cheaper from downtown or from the community. And yes, there's nothing wrong with supporting other communities, but you first must support your own. And if you want to build something, you have to find out what you want to build and what you support. So that's one thing that I want to bring forth to our forum today is like, what are you guys interested in doing and changing, and what are your goals, or what are you going to do from here on out?
I'll start. Go ahead, Arzadi.
Oh, okay. So one of the things that I really appreciate, I was new to the group, and one of the things that I thought about was mental health, the state of mental health. So I asked the question, where are our therapists? Because there is a stigma on the Black community of not having or not going and talking things out, just kind of internalizing and dealing with that. And when you internalize it, you're holding a lot in and you're not letting any of it out. And it's dangerous for you as an individual, and it's dangerous for people that you're around. But one of my commitments that I've made, and I was having this conversation with my husband, is that I have to start more buying Black, supporting our communities, buying Black, supporting our businesses so that our businesses become more common, more convenient for us. Instead of the $15 I don't want to pay for that T-shirt and everything, but the more regular we make it, the more available it'll be for us in not just our communities, but throughout communities. So that has been my commitment. And I love the fact that there are so many groups now through social media, taking the positive of social media and finding and learning about more supported by our Black and brown communities.
So what I want to do, more of this year. So I'm a microbiologist. I work in pharmaceutical manufacturing. So when I was growing up, I didn't see people who looked like me as scientists. My father always put me and my sisters in science camp every year. Anything free, we did. So the California Science Center had free science camps. My father only let us watch, specific channels like Discovery Channel. So we were watching Forensic Files and shows like that when we were in elementary. There were only certain stations that we could watch. And so I grew up wanting to be a scientist. So that was my goal. And excellence was always pushed in my household. So one thing that I said I want to do is every year, my friends know this, amongst my friend group, people will reach out to me and go to community service, with those students to Black causes. So this year I want to get that onto a larger scale. I said I want to put together, a YouTube channel to educate things like that. It's something I'm just because when I go on YouTube, I don't see people who look like me. And, you know, I've worked for very, very large companies. Like I said, you know, our current Zoom meeting, we had 500 and something employees. However, I said that my company is a global company. This is the largest company, one of the largest companies I've ever worked for. And we have hundreds, you know, of thousands of employees, but we had 600 Black people on the call. You know, I can go, you know, to meetings and, you know, be in the room with executives and not have Black people there. So that is, I've always been very passionate about that. I've been doing community service with kids, you know, younger than me since I was in junior high, but I want to continue to do that and have it expand on it on a larger scale. So, you know, I need my friends to hold me accountable, you know, with my videos and put in family members, you know, so I can put my content out, because I'm passionate about it. There's also a stigma in our community that, you know, we're not good at math and science, you know, and you can be good at anything if you expose early. But in your kids' room, but you know, whatever those visuals they see, you know, they'll be more accustomed to, you know, learning those things easily. You know, because just think about it. Think about the things that you're putting in your child's face all the time, right? On YouTube and things like that. They're learning those songs and things because those are visuals. You know, and auditory things that they hear all the time. If you start putting, you know, those scientific visuals and things out there, you know, if they're watching, you know, Zakia Iman, you know, that scientist videos, you know, those will be things and images that are, you know, that they are familiar with. So that's something that I really am passionate about, and I really want to bring that to fruition this year.
Yeah, that's excellent. I know that you did it for Amara when she was in elementary, and the students actually enjoyed it, because in our communities we don't necessarily experience the same scientific labs that the ones in Palos Verdes do. I know I worked in Palos Verdes, and they have labs that, you know, humongous, and they get to dissect different things. And yet you go into your own communities and they're not getting the same. So I commend you for that.
Chelsea, did you have something?
Yeah, just so like mine would be more so. I have a degree in mathematics from Santa Barbara. I went to school with Zakia, so mine would be along the same lines. I don't know if I want to start tutoring or just expose myself, because I work with executives and things like that. And when I go to like revenue management, when I'm in those rooms, it's just me. You know what I mean? And not only is it you know, white dominated, it's male dominated. There's not even really even any females. And just, I don't know if like he experiences, like they you have to prove yourself just for them to validate. Like my numbers will be correct, but you have to like speak louder, and you're always tiptoeing around because you don't want to be, you know, like that strong Black woman or the angry Black woman and things like that. So I think I definitely want to show little Black and brown girls that it's cool. One, it's cool to be smart. It's okay to be, you know, good at math and science, and to excel in those areas. So I want to start, even starts young. So I'm gonna start with like my niece, start doing like little math games and things. And probably I might just get out of corporate and go get my credentials eventually. It's these while like the Civil Rights Act integrated first level, nothing really, it didn't structure. And that's what white supremacy is. It's not just white people, it's white people being in power and controlling all these narratives. So I think the way we combat that is Black capital. So just learning about that from a perspective of fundraising and getting money so that Janisha can get a loan from a Black a Black hedge fund so that her t-shirts can be $5. Right? So we need to fund these businesses on a large scale. So I think that I'm conflicted. I know education is big because our kids need to know, but Black capital is huge. So if we were able to have hedge funds and things publicly traded so that Janisha can come to me and be like, well, I'm starting my company. I need 500,000 because we have been historically, denied the funds to fund these things. Be like, okay, here you go. Start your business and, do that. I think that's important in our community as well.
Yes, run me that money. Anyone else want to share? We're at 8:30, so a few more people want to share of what they're going to do to change the solution to the problem.
Okay, I want to go back to just really quick about the children, really quick, if no one had anything to add. I just wanted to say, don't limit your children in what you feel like they can understand. Everybody who knows me personally knows that I grew up in a extremely militant, household. My father was very stringent about teaching us, Black pride and about our history at a very young age, to the point where when the Rodney King riots happened in 1992, I was only like 7 or 8 years old, but I knew fully what was going on. I knew what happened, that it was wrong. And, I knew why people were rioting, and I was able to form my own opinion about that. So don't sell your kids short, and I want to share that, we used to hate, we watched a lot of documentaries growing up. And we used to hate it. My dad would sit us down on Sundays. And I mean, I was young. I was in elementary school. By the time I was in 5th grade, I was correcting my teachers, and I got kicked out of class a lot for it. So don't sell your kids short, about that, because they understand a lot more than you may be giving them credit for. But I just want to share that, when in my experience, when my dad did, he progressively exposed us to what was going on. Like, he started off with like Black pride. I'm a thin Black woman, of dark skin. And in every culture you have colorism. That's Hispanic community. I've learned in the Asian community, you have colorism, so, my own community, we have colorism, but I had so much Black pride in elementary school. No one could tell me nothing. Okay, because my dad taught me about Egyptian kings and queens, about African heritage. He started off with that when I was super young, so maybe about between the age of like 3 and 5. As far as my memory could go. When I lived in Michigan, so I can actually remember that, because like it literally was a routine. For us, he started off with Black pride, and then progressively, as we got older, when the content in school, when the content in school got a lot more difficult, he boosted it up a little bit more. Like he has his own, Black library at home, but, things that were going on television related to my Blackness, as I got older, he also, taught us about that. But like I said, he progressively gave us that information. So don't sell your kids short, and think that they're not ready for information. They'll tell you when they're not ready. Like Lisa said, her daughter was like, oh, no, that, the guns. But, it needs to be age appropriate, the way that you give them the information, but it could be as easily as a documentary, and then you open up the dialogue, and let them, give you, the cues on where they want to take that. So don't sell your kids short.
Yeah, absolutely. My daughter, I didn't know she was as woke as she was about what's going on in today's society, because I tend to be the parent that kind of, no, you can't spend a night at people's house, you can't do this. I'm very protective and overly protective, but that's just how I was raised. So I'm taking that same, behavior and putting it onto my kids. And then I realized that, my daughter is sophisticated. She's reserved. She's smart. She talks about all these different matters online when she does post, because she doesn't really post a lot, but when she posts something, it's meaningful and it has a purpose. So like you said, you will be surprised where your kids are mentally and how well they can handle certain things, especially in this day and time. So yeah, don't underestimate your kids as far as educating them about what's going on. So if anyone else want to share, I want to be mindful of people's time. I know it's Sunday. You guys some people still have work or workouts to lead tomorrow. I just want to sincerely thank everyone for tuning in. This was not a very easy task for me to do, as I'm really good at being in the office and with clients individually or in person in a group. So this was a stretch and something out of my comfort zone as far as leading the actual Zoom group for therapy or to process things with people that I actually work with or, you know, have personal relationships with. So I definitely want to commend you guys for showing up, and hopefully we can do this again next month. Is stay tuned for us posting new forums that will be coming up on the 7th. Remember, it is a blackout on July 7th. And if you want more information on things to boycott and things that you can be more involved with, just drop your email address in the chat box here and we'll forward you some stuff. I have a lot of stuff that I did put on the slideshow before this. However, the content is so much, I'd rather just send it to you directly, and you can choose and pick what you want to do. Remember, you don't have to do anything, but whatever you choose, just be consistent in what you do, because consistency gets results. If we fall off, have a support group or someone you can, you know, rely on that can hold you accountable, because accountability also helps results happen. And I'm here all the time for whoever. People can call me directly, indirectly, on Zoom, on my phone. You know, I'm not always available, but when I get available, I will definitely call you back.
Thank you, Janisha, for organizing this. I'm sure everybody, you know, appreciates it because, you know, we're at home quarantined. You know, a lot of times you're just, you know, silent. You know, you don't always have, you know, people to talk to during this period, you know, or you may not want to talk to, you know, people in your direct circle. So thank you for having this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Janisha. It's amazing. It was great chatting with you all as well.
Definitely great. Some great info in the chat. Chris said you should make sure you post it to YouTube, just because it's a lot of valuable information, just great dialogue that we were able to have. And, you know, people need this type of access. So it was appreciated.
Thank you, Ro, because this definitely was your thought process. Ro's the one who hit me up, was like, yo, you need to do this. And I was like, here we go, Ro. Always trying to put something on the plate. But it definitely made me process and say, what are you here for if you're not going to do stuff for your own people? So I really appreciate you for, you know, bringing that to my attention. And I'm glad that I was able to follow through, because Ro, no, I'd be like, I got 50,000 jobs.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, just since I've known you, you've been so dedicated to your, you know, your work, you know, what you do day to day and how much you impact people. And just knowing the traumas that we in our community face, and even people now being presented to stand with us, right? And I think these type of platforms are needed, and who better, right, as far as you, to be able to have this open dialogue to kind of, I'll say, kind of just steer the course of the conversation, right? Because you have so much background that allows us to know how to cope and how to deal and what's the next step. And you know what I'm saying? So I just think this was something that was needed. And I felt, what better person than yourself, just because I know how passionate you are about what you do. And you know me, right? I'm always going to rock with you. And, you know, I know how dedicated you are to what you do in your field and getting your license and just seeing you. So it was appreciated, you know, I'm happy you followed through with it. And hopefully you're able to have something like this again. Because we don't know, right? We don't know what the course of this time period is going to take. We don't know what's going to transpire and what's next. And say these guys don't get convicted, right? Then we have a whole nother trauma that we're going to have to deal with from our community. And people are going to need this type of thing to have conversation with, of how to deal with, because if they don't get convicted, it's things can heighten, and it's a scary thing to think about. And but yeah, I just appreciate you. And like I said, you're the person to do this. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I just have so much gratitude right now. And yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys. I love you all. Be safe. We shall do this again. And vote, 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 vote.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Good night.
Good night.
Our Lord, grant us good in this world and good in the life to come keep us safe from the torment of the fire. As we keep our hands up high and scream for justice. Ferguson, rest in peace, Mike Brown, and all the young soldiers out there. God help us.